Shalom Habarim, Shalom Habarim. Let's see if we can settle this right here. Is Hebrew Yiddish? Is Yiddish Hebrew? Seems to be a confusion among certain ones and ones, especially of Ami. What is Ami? Ami is my people, my brothers. You know, so it's meant the Hebrew Israelites, black Hebrew Israelites, so-called, or Yehudi, or we as Beta Israel. And those who seek, the N words, who seek the true identity as the I word, right, or the J word, or the Y word, don't understand this whole Yiddish, what's the difference between Yiddish and Hebrew. So then we're going through some of the teaching, verse by verse, giving some of the plain enunciation. We even touch a little bit on the baby Hebrew, the baby Hebrew. It's like the Abba Gada, that's like the baby Hebrew, as little children, we learn that and we grow, and some of the other ones who be going around deceiving folks, talking about there's only 2 or 3 letters or confusing a script, Paleo Hebrew is a script type. That's a script type right there. It's like a font type, what they call a font type from, the Asherit, the square Hebrew, as it is. But here we're going to touch a little bit on Hebrew versus Yiddish. Came across this very interesting article right here. Has some simple basics, because this has to be like a series right here. A real series right here. Now, here they say go to the website. Let me see if it goes to the website. Boom. Wow. This new software really works pretty good right here. Okay, go to the website. Okay, let's take that off right there. At the bottom, let's read this together. Right? This is from Diffen, right? Philosophy, religion, and Yahadut called Judaism in translation. So here on Hebrew versus Yiddish. What's the difference between Hebrew versus Yiddish? All right, so let's read this together. So Hebrew, or what we can call Ivrit. Actually, biblical Hebrew as we have it today should be more properly be known as Yehudit. Right? In translation, they call that the Jews' language in the translation. Should we bring up the KJV? I think we need to bring up the KJV. All right, let's bring up the KJV. Let's bring up the KJV right here. Here. Okay, here. Take my yoke. Yes, the study was on. Let's bring up what they call the Jews. Right, the Jews' language, right, KJV. So for all those who are bibliolators on the KJV, the people at KJV only, that's something for y'all too. But here, 2 Kings 18:26, then said Eliakim, right, let's get the Hebrew right here, Eliakim, right, Eliakim, Almighty God, Yakim, raises, right? God raises up, God sets up. Then said Yakim, the son of Chilkiah, my portion, Chilkiah. So we have Yah, he who be, right? The bigrammaton, also Jah, right? And the later, the later font types and everything. Okay, let's get into this right here. Give thanks. I think it was Brother Yosef right there. But here in this teaching, let's put in this work. Chelek is like a portion of share. Chelek, right? I always like to break it down, build it up. Also can be smoothness, right? But here to prove the Yehudit. So what we're saying, we're maintaining, is that what once called the Ivrit or the Hebrew today, more properly should be called the Yehudit, right? What is the Yehudit? In translation, that's the Yehudi, right, language, right, or the dialect of the ancient, right, what ones might call the Ivrit of the ancient Hebrew, right, that comes down to us today. Remember the 10 tribes, they went into exile, never to return. Yehuda, the southern kingdom, went into exile, and then there was that return, even of we, the black Jews of the tribe of Judah, after the 70 years. But here in 1 Kings 18:26, then said Eliakim, the son of Chilkiah, and Shebna, and Yoah, right, to Rav Sheka. Speak, I pray thee, to thy servants in the Syrian language. What's the Syrian language? Right here we have the H762. That's the Aramite. What's the Aramite? The Aramite in Hebrew is the Aramaic language, the language of Aram, Aramaic. Because a lot of people become confusing things. You know, they're saying that, well, Yeshua didn't speak Hebrew, he spoke Aramaic. That was like a novelty back then, right? But a whole series on the Aramaic, the nuances, to understand the different dialects of the Afro-Shemitic language. But here, when it says the Syrian language, that's the Aramite, right? For we understand it, and it's what it says, and talk not with us in the what? It says, see what it says, Jews' language, in the ears of the people that are on the wall, right? So here the Yehudi language is properly called the Yehudit. Now the transliteration have the TH, Yehudith, right? But according to the ancient Afro-Semitic, we point it as Yehudit, Yehudith, right? The Yehudi language. Now it says the Jewish, right? The Ish, the mandam of Yehuda, right? The man of the southern kingdom of the tribe of Judah, right? Like the lion of Judah, the lion of the tribe. Here we're speaking about the southern kingdom. Because let's remember that the 10 tribes were already gone by 700 and something, right? BCE, right? After that, we only have Yehuda, right? The southern kingdom of Yehuda, right? Judah, the Judahites, the Judeans. This is where we get into the English translations and interpolations of, quote, Jew, right? Jew, quote, end quote, right? The Jewish, right? Speaking about the tribe of Judah, the southern kingdom. So when the kingdom got split, right, there was a united kingdom under King Saul, Shaul, and under King Dawid HaMelech, and then under his son Beno, Shlomo, or Solomon. But then after that time, right, remember the queen of the south visiting Solomon, right? David had a son named Solomon. Solomon had a son named David, and David renewed the kingdom, right? That son of Solomon, who's the son of David, renewed the kingdom, right, in the tops of the mountains of Ethiopia. That's what the prophecy in Psalm 87, verse 4, right? Im Kush, Zeyulad Sham. With Ethiopia, this man was born there. So here we have the Yehudit, right? So many refer to it as Hebrew language, right? Actually, what we have within the scrolls, Masoretic and otherwise Hebrew, that comes down to us, you know, from the time of the 1st century, and then also from the time of the latter part of the, the BC, so-called BC times, right? Comes down to the writings of the tribe of Judah, right? This is why Jew and Yehuda and Judah is so important. Sometimes people say, well, why you say Judah? Why not Israel? Right? Well, we have to understand what happened with the breach, right? And also understand what's in the prophecy concerning the house, the Beit Yehuda, right? It's through the house of Judah that Yahweh Eloheinu is working prophetically and has worked. So the language properly is the Yehudit language, right? You can see it here in the next verse here, 2 Kings 18:28, the Yehudit language. So nowhere in the scripture do we really have anything called the Hebrew language, right, in the scripture. The Ivri, Ha-Ivri. Abraham was called Ha-Ivri. He was called the Ivri, the crosser over. Now, it both has a twofold. There's in the Midrash, the Beit Midrash, we study, in the study of the scripts, we find there's the two truths, right, in Hebrew and in the sense of the scripts as this duality, right, of words and concepts. It's like Rabbeinu Yeshua said, if I show you earthly things, right, and you don't understand, how can you understand heavenly things? You know, if I show you, like things down here, simple, plain things, then how can you understand the more complex things, right? So here you can see clearly, right, between, there's this linguistic thing we have to understand, right? Even in Nehemiah, right, is the interesting part, because many of the Yehudi tribe of Judah, Ha-Yehudim, the Judeans, the Old Testament the black Jews, tribe of Judah, right, they had married various other women, right, and they had their children, and their children spake half in the speech of Ashdod, That's some other people's speech. And could not speak in the Yehudit. You see what it said? They could not speak in the Yehudit. Right? It didn't say no paleo. They didn't say they could not speak in the paleo. No, the Yehudit. But according to the language, what? Of each people. So they could not speak their own language. They could not discern to speak. Like many ones making some critical errors. We say something, say, oh, that is Yiddish. That's not Hebrew. Right? Like there's no other vowel in Hebrew. There are 7 primary vowels in Hebrew. You see? Right? Not according to the letter, right? But according to the spirit of Torah. Right, of the people and the people. So they spoke various languages, and right here it says commanded to the Yehudim, and here in this verse right here, their language, to every people in their language, to the Yehudi. Right, you see it says Jews there. That's the Yehudi, Yehudi. Some say Yahudi, and once again they don't understand, don't know Hebrew. Right, they say Yahudi and Yahuda, but that's not truly Hebrew. Right, we're gonna get to the roots right there. A Judahite. That is to say, a Judahite, a Yehudite, right, or a Yehudi in the English, transliterated into the English and all that went on in the English. That's where we get Jew from, right? Someone to play around and say, well, you say Jew. There's a J there. Yeah, we know there's a J there. Well, we know there's no J in Hebrew, but here we're speaking English. You're speaking English too, but you're going to tell us about one word here or one word there. So stop using, if you're a Hebrew Israelite and J is so bad, then don't say nothing to say J. Right? Say, you should enjoy yourself. Enjoy yourself. You don't understand what I'm saying? Enjoy yourself. Do your thing. Enjoy yourself. All right? To say enjoy yourself. Then stop saying the J. So we have these little simple things that confuse our understanding. Right? We're speaking English here. So when we say descendant of Jehuda, in the Hebrew, that'll be Yehuda. Yehuda don't mean that Jah he praises. Who does Yahweh praise? No. Yehuda means he is praised. That son of Leah and Abinu Yaakov. Right? She says, now, like I'll name him celebrated because she praised Yahweh for that child, that 4th child, and called his name praised, celebrated. Therefore, it was Yehuda, not Yahuda. That is to say, Yehuda, Judah. So you can clearly see, right? Let me show you a couple of, how many verses have we been showing you right here? We're looking up Jews' language. Let's go to the top right. There's these 6 verses that point it out, right? Can you find the Hebrew language? Can you find, I'm talking about the Old Covenant. We know that they wrote on the cross of the Hebrew and the Greek and the Latin. We get that. We get that right there. But even that in the New Covenant really refers to the square Hebrew, Asherit. That's really Aramaic, right? But we'll touch on that. Remember that Aramaic was a language of Assyria and Babylon, right? That Aramaic. This is where the influence in the latter Hebrew comes in of the Aramaic, right? But Yeshua truly spoke the Yehudit, right? He spoke the Hebrew, the Yehudit. You know what I mean? And why is the Yehudit so important? Because Hebrew refers to the person, refers to their spirituality, right? Just like Abraham, right? Assyrian, Black Assyrian or Sumerian. But here, let's touch on this right there. We want to just show that right there, right? Because people then they'll go off on the Jews. Well, we the black Jews of the Lion of the tribe of Judah. So what's the difference right here between the Hebrew and Yiddish, right? The Hebrew and the Yiddish, right? Heard one guy say that shalom, to say shalom, right? To say shalom, they said that's Yiddish and was told some shalawam. What? Where you get that from? Lashon Kadash? No. That's not it right there, right? And then one say, well, it's Hebrew, right? Or this is Yiddish. Well, what's the difference between Hebrew and Yiddish? They are languages spoken by Jews, right, all over the world. Now the thing is interesting. There was a black man, a young black man. I think the video is still out there. The community, like some of the Hasidic community up here in New York, he was impressing them because he's like a kind of like a polydidact or like autodidact. Like he's a self-taught. He knows a lot of languages and everything. He was speaking the Yiddish. Now Yiddish is spoken by Eastern European Yehudi, right? Eastern European Yehudi. Yiddish is almost like their patois, Eastern European patois, right? So this is what it means spoken by Jews, right? Especially certain Eastern European Jews all over the world, right? But a lot of other people also understand languages. Language is this language. Interestingly, Hebrew and Yiddish are very dissimilar. You see what it says right there? They're not very similar. So how are our people, many so-called black Hebrews and Hebrew Israelites, making this mistake? It's like the same mistake they're making with the so-called Lashon Kadash, as they call it, right? Even though both languages use the Hebrew alphabets in their scripts. Look at that right there, right? So both languages use the Hebrew alphabet. The other day, they had sent something during the time of that whole pestilence and everything that was going on. There were some things like, in the mail, they'd be sending some public PSA kind of information. I was reading and they had all the different languages of, I guess, different people, different, in addition to English. Then I saw something that looked like Hebrew. I saw the script was called the Hebrew script. But as I was reading, I could clearly tell it wasn't Hebrew. It was Yiddish. Right? But both languages are truly dissimilar, right? But both languages, right? The Hebrew, more correctly, the Yehudit, but the Hebrew and the Yiddish both use the Hebrew alphabets. But look at this. Let's go on. While Hebrew, cut that off. There we go. While Hebrew is a Shemitic language, y'all who have kind of followed this podcast will notice that we often say things like Afro-Shemitic. Right? Afro-Shemitic. Notice this right here. Notice what it says right here. It says, while Hebrew is a Semitic or a Shemitic language, right? It's a subgroup of the what? Let's go over here so you can see it more clearly. Of the Afro-Asiatic languages. The Afro-Asiatic. You see Afro right there? So if Hebrew is Afro, how dare they say it doesn't have anything to do with the African? Right? Afro-Asiatic. Afro-Asiatic black man. Afro-Asiatic languages like Arabic, right? The Arabic and Amharic. See right there? Look, boom. Right there is the Amharic link. So when we talk about Hebrew, right, being Afro-Semitic or Afro-Asiatic, some of the scholars refer to as Afro-Asiatic. Other scholarship, you might find Afro-Shemitic or Afro-Semitic. They said, now, Yiddish, what's the difference? What's the big difference between Hebrew and Yiddish? Well, Yiddish is a what? What does it say right here? Yiddish is a, let's take this part right here, part by part, right? Yiddish is a German dialect, right? So Yiddish is a German dialect, right? This is the key thing right here. It's telling us that Yiddish is a German dialect. Oh, all right. So once again, right here. Yiddish is a German dialect. You see the difference? So Hebrew is connected to Africa and Asia. Check. Hebrew is connected to Africa and Asia. That's what they call it, Afro-Asiatic, right? Afro, coming out of Africa, right? So it came out of Africa and also returns, right, to Africa. While Yiddish is a German dialect that uses many Hebrew words. That's maybe where the confusion among many ones come in, because it uses many Hebrew words. But, let's get the rest of the quote right here, but with a very distinctive Ashkenazic pronunciation, very distinctive Eastern European, what we call like the mother tongue. They have an Eastern European mother tongue, right? And therefore their pronunciation, of many words, it takes on the Eastern European, like we say Shabbat. In the Ashkenazic pronunciation, some say Shavos. It sounds like Shavos. It's like Shavos, right? So the TH on some words, bayit is house, right? So the Ashkenazic pronunciation is like bais, right? Bais, the house right there. Bayit, right? That's the Afro-Shemitic, bayit, right? Beta Mekdes in Amharic, Bait Mikdash, right? Mikdash. They would say like Bais Mikdash, Bais Mikdash, Bais. So that's just a little example right there, right? So Yiddish is a what? German dialect, right? Yiddish as a language. It's basically German, but German that's written in their peculiar pronunciation and often with Hebrew and Hebrew letters, right? It was a way that they could speak what they speak, even among the Germans, unless the Germans knew the Hebrew, alphabet. You know what I'm saying? It was a way to use their language, almost like Spanglish, right? Comparison chart, right? So the language family, the Hebrew and the Yiddish. Right, this is very important. So hopefully my people, right, I people can get out of this confusion and really get to learn what's what. What's what. The Hebrew language family is Afro-Asiatic, Semitic, West Semitic, Central Semitic, Northwest Semitic. Then they put the Canaanite and the Hebrew right there. Right? They should put the Canaanite in the Yiddish column too, but that's a whole other point right there. You know what I mean? But on the Yiddish column, they say Indo-European. So what we have is Indo-European people, right, who are speaking an Afro-Asiatic language. So we have Indo-European, Germanic West, Germanic High, German Yiddish. This is what comes down to Yiddish. So Yiddish comes from the roots of the Indo-European, Germanic, West Germanic, High German. But what they do is they use the Hebrew Aleph Bet, or the Hebrew alphabet, right? The ranking right here, Hebrew and Yiddish, 77, right? 141. I'm not too sure what that ranking right there basically means. I guess maybe of languages. Total speakers. So the total speakers of Hebrew, the Afro-Asiatic language, they estimate here about 10 million. They say in Israel, the state of Israel, Hebrew is the first language for 5.3 million people. Now, we're talking about the modern, right? Modern Hebrew. But even with the modern Hebrew and a good discipline, right, it's kind of a key to biblical Hebrew. I want to point that out right there. And second language for, 2 to 2.2 million, according to a 2009 statistic. Right? On the opposite side, Yiddish, 3 million. 3 million. Right? Now, this kind of merges together because a lot of those in the state of Israel also speak Yiddish and have Ashkenazic pronunciation. That's a part of their mother tongue. Well, you have other speakers, right? Like the Israelites of Africa, for example, you have the Beta Israel, right? The Beta Israel, and that connection with the Ge'ez, right? A pure Shemitic, we say a Shemitic language, and also the Amharic, Afro-Shemitic language. Now, in the United States, it is estimated that about 200,000 people speak Hebrew at home. Now, we're not saying that this is necessarily all accurate, but so we can tell, well, what's the difference between this and that, right? Because sometimes when I hear some of the, brothers and sisters and the people going, oh, that's Yiddish, or that's Yiddish, that's Yiddish, and so, how you say that's Yiddish? One actually said that saying shalom is Yiddish. And I said, this is too far. I gotta address this one. Shalom is Yiddish. I'm talking about shalawam. Right? The one said, well, we say shalom at the beginning of a sentence, and we say shalawam. Well, shalawat? Say what? Right? Well, Hebrew spoken in Israel, global, as a liturgical language for Yahadut. Yahadut in the Hebrew is Judaism. Right? Also spoken in the West Bank and Gaza. Right? Hebrew. Now, this is according to their kind of a narrow scope. Right? Now, as we begin to study and learn, we can increase that as well. But notice the link for the Hebrew, they already show you, they said Arabic, right? And then they said Amharic. Now, most people will point to Arabic being a link with the Hebrew, but most don't point to the Amharic, right? The Amharic, right? The imperial language of the Lion of the tribe of Judah. So look at that. Hebrew, Afro-Asiatic, related to Arabic and Amharic. Amharic, the language of the King of Kings of Ethiopia, the language of the Lion of the tribe of Judah, also the language of the Beta Israel people that have deep roots. I mean, such deep roots right there. Now, the racists will say, well, the Jews are white people. They're white people, and the Beta Israel are just converts. When did they convert, and who converted them? You see the lies that people will tell, right? We just show you how Yiddish, right, is Indo-European. And then they use, right, the Hebrew alphabet to write their Yiddish. While Hebrew is Afro, Semitic, Afro-Asiatic, right? And, you know, Africa is right there. Ethiopia right there. Aim, Kush, Zeyulat Sham. With Ethiopia, this was born there. That link right there, Psalm 87, right? Verse 4. Are you not as the children of the Ethiopians, the mere children of Israel? And then say, well, are you not as the children of the Ashkenazi unto me? Right? And then say the Eastern Europeans unto me, those who converted in 74 AD, you know, Yah bless them. However, it does say, are you not as the B'nai Kushim unto me, O B'nai Yisrael? So where is Yiddish spoken? Right? United States, Israel, Argentina, Brazil, United Kingdom, Russia, Canada, Ukraine, because the Yiddish becomes like the Eastern European patois, if you understand what I'm saying. Is their patois, right? And because they can write it in Hebrew, right? Since most people don't know Hebrew, the letters or, you know, and they don't know the Yiddish, they get confused by what they see. Belarus, Ukraine, remember Ukraine? Boom, there you go. Ukraine, Belarus, right? Hungary, or Belarus, right? Hungary, right? Moldova, Lithuania, Belgium, Germany, Poland, Australia, France, and elsewhere. You see, it mentioned a lot of the Eastern European, the Slavic countries. You see how these flipped it around? Bottom rail on top, top rail on bottom. Now we got to learn the difference between Hebrew versus Yiddish, right? Pronunciation standard Israeli, standard Israeli, that was Sephardic. Pronunciation, there's Iraqi pronunciation. So the pronunciation of different Hebrew speakers depends on their mother tongues. But we already know that the roots of the language is Afro-Asiatic, Afro-Semitic. Therefore, the closest dialects to the more true dialects are like the Yemenite, right there. Benjamin. We have Benjamin, Yemenite, right? In Yemen, ancient Yemen, right across the line of the tribe of Judah. Ethiopia, scripture, Bible points it. With Ethiopia, this man was born there. Are you not as the children of the Ethiopian, the male children of Israel? What more evidence you need? The Yemenite. Then we have the Ashkenazi, right? Notice right here it's talking about the different ways. Ivrit, right? Ivrit, that's Ivrit with a V. Ivrit, right? Notice how here in the one with the Yemenite, let me highlight it right here. The Yemenite say it in Afro-Shemitic with Ibrit, right? Ibrit. While if you look above, you see where it's like if the R upside down, you see the V right there. Ivrit. Sephardic say Ivrit, Spanish-speaking Moreno Jews, right? The Ashkenazi say Ivris. Remember what we were saying about the Ashkenazic pronunciation? Ivris. Because like the T at the end, in many words in the Ashkenazic pronunciation, it sounded like an S. Bait, house, is bais. Shabbat is shavos, right? Hebrew pronunciation, right, is Sephardic. So the mainstream of the state of Israel Hebrew pronunciation tends to follow the Sephardic. So even the Ashkenazic give way to the Sephardic, because for them in Europe, they're like an older branch, so to speak, if you understand, right? The Yiddish now on the other side, right? Yiddi, right? This is the pronunciation. Yiddish pronunciation is Ashkenazic. You see what it says? Yiddish pronunciation is Ashkenazic, right? So even in the state of Yisrael, they speak more of the pronunciation in the standard Hebrew is more Sephardic, right? While we have the Yiddish pronunciation is Ashkenazic. You see right there? Take a screenshot of that right there. These are basic slides, building points, so we can get a basic understanding and get over the ignorance and the foolishness. Official language. Where is Hebrew the official language? Modern Hebrew, that is, in the state of Israel. While Yiddish, official minority language, is the official minority language, and we're Sweden. recognized as a minority language in Moldova, right, and parts of Russia. See, for them, that's their North Country. For us, America here, this is our North Country. We believe this is what the scripture was talking about in Jeremiah, in Ermias, Jeremiah. But here in Russia, parts of Russia, they have Yehudi or Jewish autonomous oblasts. Like they have autonomous communities where they can rule and regulate themselves, right? Basically, you know, almost like with the Muslim, they have the Sharia law. Certain areas they have certain, you know, Jewish or, you know, law where they function their own community. Here, let's go down here. Hebrew Academy of Hebrew Language, Ha-Academia Lashon Ha-Ivrit. So it's called Ha-Academia Lashon, right? Lashon of the language Ha-Ivrit, Ha-Ivrit of Hebrew. Now for Yiddish, there are no formal bodies, right? There's the Yivo de facto, right? Some of the organizations that basically kind of maybe regulate. Abbreviations, HE for Hebrew, Yiddish YI or HEB, right, for Hebrew, and YID for Yid, right? And then we go on right here. You can see clearly there's differences all the way down. There's modern Hebrew, right, the HEB for modern Hebrew. Then there's the HBO for the ancient Hebrew. Yiddish, there's generic Yiddish, there's Eastern Yiddish, there's Western Yiddish. So they have their different dialects, depends on their region. It's almost like when we speak English here in America. Some of us are in New York, we have a New York accent, some have a Chicago accent, Boston, Atlanta, you know, different parts up north, down south. You know, when we talk about East Coast, West Coast, but we still are all speaking English. Well, the same occurs with any language. Let's note that here. But there's a distinct difference between the Ivrit, the Hebrew, and the Yiddish. Introduction right here. This is a little introduction, right? Hebrew, the Ivrit. Hebrew pronunciation is a Semitic language of the Afro-Asiatic language family. So there's a whole language family. It's about the Bible. You know, the biggest proof that, you know, the Hebrews and Israelites are African and African-related people, Afro-related people, Afro-Asiatic-related people is the definition and the qualification of the language, being an Afro-Asiatic language. Culturally, it is considered, culturally, you have to understand culture wars, all right? What's that thing they've been doing about culture? There's something that they've been doing in culture. What's that called again? Thank you. Yeah, I just had to take a moment to think of that whole cultural thing, because what they're saying over here in this column here, all right? So what we call culture vulture, that's one of the things, but I was thinking about they call it cancel culture. So notice, even though it's Afro-Asiatic, right? Let's keep that in mind, Afro-Asiatic. See, they try to fool you when they come to the term Middle Eastern. Middle Eastern only was popping after World War II. Middle Eastern is not an ancient terminology. It's a modern political construct, right? The more ancient construct that's based on reality is to say Afro-Semitic or Afro-Asiatic. But today, right, because of, you know, what happens with cults and culture, right, you know, culture vulture, right, we say we have to get to a cancel culture. Right, because the real culture of the Hebrew language is Afro-Asiatic, it's Afro-Semitic, right? It's Afro-Semitic. See, they like to say Semitic, but if you go do your studies, it's more qualified correctly as Afro-Semitic, right? Because the Bible bears witness to this. You know, they use the Shem, Ham, and Japheth to divide and conquer, but the reality is a little more different. You know what I mean? Culturally, it is considered a Jewish language, right? Culturally, in the modern culture, right? Where's the cancel culture, huh? Right? A Jewish language, right? Hebrew in its modern form. Now, remember, we're talking about modern. So we're talking about two things here. The roots of it, Afro-Semitic, and the modern forms of it. Right? Hebrew in its modern form is spoken by many of the 7 million people in Israel, the state of Israel. Now, we actually recommend that we should be studying that, right? The modern as well, right? To become, how can you say, adept and familiar, you know? Anyway, Yiddish. Let's get deal with the Yiddish right here. Yiddish, or Yiddish, right? So some say Yiddish, some say Yiddish, Yiddish, right? Literally, right? Literally Jewish. You see this? This is the key right here, so we can understand what we're saying, right? So Yiddish, right, is literally Jewish, right? You see this part? We're trying to highlight this part right here. Right? It doesn't seem to be highlighting right there, but it's a part in the right-hand column. Yiddish, right, is literally, right, Jewish, right? And Jewish, Jew-ish. Ish means man in Hebrew. Ain't that interesting? Now some say, well, no, it's the ish from the English. Okay, perhaps. But to say a Jew, we showed you the Bible, right? Let's go back to the Bible quickly right here, right? So the Jews' language, right? Let's get a part where it just says the Jews. There we go right there. That's from what Hester, right? So you see what it says Jews? Look at it. It says Yehudi. You see? So in the language, it's actually Yehudi, right? In the translation to English is Jew, right? So now they add ish. Ish means man in Hebrew, right? And now they're saying right here that Yiddish, right, according to the definitions, or Yiddish, is literally to say Jewish. Now they define that Yiddish is a High German language of Ashkenazi Jewish origin. They're actually giving you the truth. You know what I mean? They're actually giving us the truth right there. It's a High German language. It's Germanic, not Hebrew. So the confusion comes in because since that's their language, right? That's their mother tongue, right? Now, religiously speaking and culturally speaking, the Hebrew, and they write the Yiddish, the High German, in the Hebrew script, right? But they pronounce it with the Ashkenazic pronunciation. Check. But actually, its origin is High German language of Ashkenazic Jewish. That means someone who was a gerim, you know, a stranger, a convert, origin, right? Spoken throughout the world. It developed as a what? A fusion. So now they're telling us the truth right here. As a what? A fusion of German dialects. So not even one German dialect. Okay, we can highlight this part here. I don't know why we can highlight that other part there. But you can see where it says right here. It developed as a fusion of German dialects. With what? With Hebrew, right? The Ivrit, the Yehudit, Aramaic, and Slavic languages. And we already done show and prove that the terminology, the modern term for slave, comes from the ancient word Slav. And the Eastern European countries were like the Slavic, right? The Slavic slave, Slavic speaking countries, right? This is where we speak about the link with the Canaan of the Bible. But they flipped the whole script right there. But still, truth can be found. Lastly but not leastly, the origin, Hebrew, Semitic language, more correctly, Afro-Semitic language of Afro-Asiatic language family. So when we say here, one speak about the Asiatic black man. Some would put Asia first and say the Asiatic black man, like the NOI, the Nation of Islam. Others of us put it correctly as the Afro-Asiatic, right? Afro-Asiatic. Even His Imperial Majesty, enough that he has done, right, for the Afro-Asiatic, you know, community, right? That's our community right there. Yiddish, High German language of Ashkenazic or Ashkenazi Jewish origin, right? It should be really Jewish convert, because the truth of the matter is that they converted. They like to say that the Ethiopians converted because of racism. They want to say, well, because they're black. We have at least 5 to 6 different African communities that all have legitimate evidence and witness of them being Hebrew, Israelite, Judahite peoples. Now, notice here, the last part, not least, the writing system. The writing system for Hebrew or Yehudi is what? It's the Hebrew script, or the Asherit. The modern Hebrew's Asherit, called Asher, the square Hebrew, Asherit. So we can have a discussion on Paleo is a font type, and the Asherit is a font type. But the Yiddish, what is their writing system? You see what it says Hebrew-based, right? Hebrew-based. They didn't even say Hebrew, but they say Hebrew-based. Let's have a discussion on what's the difference right there, Hebrew-based, right? So right here, history of the Hebrew, the languages. Like we can go into this and the Yiddish languages. There's more on this right here, right? There's more on this, like to pick up on this in a further, a further exploration, right? But let's touch on Yiddish, right? Because what I think my people really don't understand is how it's different. Yiddish developed as a fusion, like a patois, like a Creole. So Yiddish is actually a modern Eastern European Creole, like a Creole language, like a patois, so to speak, right? As a fusion of Hebrew, right? Based on the understanding of the Hebrew, Slavic languages, Romance, that's the Roman languages. This here shows there's a difference between the Slavic Eastern European people and the Romance, like Italian, Latin, for example, Latin, Italian, right? I mean, even Greek kind of gets into that whole Roman language, because actually Greek was the second language of the Romans. Check. Romance language and Aramaic with German dialects. They didn't even say like a German dialects, but with German dialects. So what makes this any more legitimate, right, than, say, Amharic, right, or the language of the Beta Israel of Ethiopia, right, or the Abba Yudaya people, or the Lemba people, or our various other community peoples that are peppered throughout the continent that nowadays is called Africa. But more on Yiddish. The origin of Yiddish can be traced back to the what? 10th century Ashkenazic culture in the Rhineland, that eventually spread to Eastern and Central Europe. 10th century, we're talking 10th century AD. 10th century AD. That's like 900 something, right? So when we come to the year 900 AD something, in the 900s, that's the 10th century, right? That spread eventually to Eastern and Central Europe, right? So we know that the roots of the Beta Israel of Ethiopia and many other communities that we have in the continent of Africa, Afro-Shemitic communities, their testimony is even going back to BC times. Check, right? And we say this because when one's question our people's authenticity, right, we have to push back with the truth. Initially, speaking of Yiddish, initially known as the language of Ashkenaz, right? And we know that Ashkenaz doesn't come from the Shemitic line, but Ashkenaz come from the Japhetic line, right? Yiddish soon came to be known as the mother tongue, or Mame Loshen. You see Mame Loshen? See how they say lotion? That's how they say Lashon. We say Lashon, they say Loshen, because the mother dialect, the way they enunciate words. People do speak even sometimes similar languages differently. So this is where they bring in, certain words from their understanding of the Hebrew. Yiddish was different from biblical Hebrew and Aramaic, which were known as, see now they're spelling it in the Yiddish way. Loshen Kodesh. That's how they say Lashon Kadosh, or Lashon Kodesh. Lashon Kodesh, but you can see how they pronounce it right here. So somebody is, when we see this, the Loshen Kodesh, and we hear that, we know, okay, it's an attempt to pronounce the Yehudit, but it's pronounced from a Yiddish, right, pronunciation, right? It's a way of saying the holy tongue, Lashon, more correctly, the Lashon Kodesh. Lashon Kodesh. Even that K, that special K, kof, right? The only ones that maintain even the proper pronunciation of that special K, that click K, right, in Kodesh for holy, is ones like, our people in Africa, right, in the highlands, the Israelites of Ethiopia, particularly even the Beta Israel, right? Keep that click. Remember we showed you from the top that Hebrew is related to the Arabic and Amharic, right? They should really put the Amharic and Arabic, since the roots of Ethiopia and the Yehudi and Israelite peoples go deeper, right? Yeah, but be that as it may, it says 18th century, right? The 18th century, you know what in the 18th century was? Like the 1700s. The 1700s AD was the 18th century. Saw Yiddish being used in literature. Now, so this shows us that this language, even this kind of movement, is still very young. Right? So when we talk about Ethiopia, the Israelites, we're going to the early AD times. We're going to the late BC times, going even to the early BC times. We're going through various Shemitic languages of the Shemitic-speaking people of Ethiopia, like the Ge'ez, right? Even the Tigrinya, right? The Amarinya, the Amharic, right? So in the 18th century is when Yiddish started being used in their literature, where they started not only to speak, right, what they were speaking, but to also write. See, writing is so important. Primarily spoken by Ashkenazi Jews, Yiddish dialects are divided into Western Yiddish and Eastern Yiddish. That includes Litvish, Polish. You see, we say Polish, but their pronunciation Polish, and Ukrainish. Notice how ish is on all these words, right? Notice how ish is on all these words right here, right? Within the, you say the Yiddish family of languages, right? What does it say? Litvish, Polish, and Ukrainish, right? Western Yiddish had no use of words of Slavic origin. Check this. In Western Yiddish, right, they had no use of words of Slav, where the word slave in English come from Slav, right, origin, while Eastern Yiddish used them extensively. So when you study the Eastern Yiddish, they have a lot of Slavic words, while the Western Yiddish, right, had no use of words of Slavic origin, according to this study right here. Eastern Yiddish continues, once again, Eastern Yiddish continues to be used widely, while use of Western Yiddish has dwindled significantly. So the Yiddish, right, the Yiddish that use extensive use of Slavic, because no matter what one say, that even, you know, the European Jews, they still are holding to their roots, right? To their roots, right? So when we're speaking about Amharic, Ethiopic, it's like it falls on deaf ears among the ain't right Israelites that, okay, so right here. Now, there's so much more that we can go to in this article, right here, differences in phonology, breaking down, certain details that we need to touch on right here. Some of this we already touched on earlier, right? But so that we can know the difference, right? The difference. So they are feeding on the biblical Hebrew, right? But they have created or used their native speech, their Germanic speech, right, to articulate it, and still their mother tongue, right? Their mother tongue, shines through right here. So here, right? Now notice this right here. It's like American English and British English. Is it not both English? Check, right? So this is kind of the point that needs to be understood and made right here. Okay, so anyway, this is a very interesting page. Let me show you the top of this one here again. Right, this is the page right here. Right, this is the page, right? Let's see if we can go right here. Okay, let's go back to this picture right here. Okay, on defense, right? On defense right here, right? The difference between, Hebrew versus Yiddish, right? What's the difference? Right? What's the difference? Hopefully this is a basic build, and we hope to return and kind of build on this subject a little bit more as we move forward. This is Yad in here, PKA, Ras Iodonis, here, Rastafari Yehudim, right? We, the black Jews, Yehudim of the Lion of the tribe of Judah, Society of His Divine Majesty. Yes, Shalom Chabarim, Shalom. And Yom Teruah Tova, Yom Teruah Tova, Lishana Tova. In other words, a good, day of trumpets also in this season, Sukkot, Tabernacles, Shalom Chabarim, Yeshua Shalom.